September 19th, 1944. Münsterbusch, Germany. The metal hatch felt cold under Lafayette Poole's gloved hands as he stood exposed in the commander's position, looking toward the tree line in the dim light before dawn. His orders that morning had been clear and unusually cautious. "No spearheading today, P. You and your crew are heading home for a war bonds tour. Stay on the flank, stay safe." But as he stood in the turret, 6 miles from Aachen, with the concrete dragon's teeth of the Siegfried line behind them, Poole knew something that nearly 3 months of non-stop combat had taught him well. In war, safety did not exist. The Sherman tank beneath him carried the name "In the Mood," painted in white block letters on the armor. It was the 3rd tank under his command to carry that name. The first 2 had already been destroyed. This one, within less than an hour, would meet the same fate in an event that would end the deadliest tank-killing run by any American soldier in history. The air that morning smelled of diesel fuel and burned powder from the fighting the day before. Poole could hear other Sherman tanks moving into place nearby. The heavy clatter of tracks on stone roads, the deep rumble of engines, and the calm voices of tank commanders checking positions over the radio. Somewhere ahead, hidden among the shattered buildings and rubble of Münsterbusch, German soldiers waited with 88mm guns and Panzerfausts. Poole had faced these weapons many times before. He respected them, he feared them, but he never allowed that fear to stop him from acting. His approach to tank combat was simple and absolute. Strike first, strike hard, get close before the enemy can use their better weapons. That aggressive mindset had kept him alive through 21 major attacks, through the loss of 2 tanks, and through countless close calls where enemy shells missed by inches or bounced harmlessly off armor. But this morning was different. With home just days away, Lafayette Poole's luck was about to run out. June 14th, 1941, Fort Sam Houston, Texas. The enlistment papers bore the signature of a 21-year-old farm boy from Odom, Texas. He had left his engineering studies at Texas College of Arts and Industries to serve his country. Lafayette Green Poole stood 6 feet 2 inches tall, lean and strong from years of hard work on South Texas farmland. His hands were rough from rope, tools, and plows long before they would learn to control a 33-ton Sherman tank. He was born 5 minutes after his twin brother, John Thomas, on July 23, 1919, in the small farming town of Odom. He grew up nearby, on a farm near the town of Sinton. Both places sat in the hot, flat coastal plains of South Texas, where summer temperatures often passed 100 degrees and rain was never guaranteed. Life on a Texas farm in the 1920s was hard. Days began at sunrise and ended at dark. Days were filled with tending cattle, fixing fences, and repairing broken equipment using whatever could be found or reused. Electricity was rare. Water came from hand-pumped wells. Entertainment meant listening to the radio when batteries were available and attending church gatherings on Sundays. Lafayette, called Leif for family and friends, and his twin brother were close, even though their personalities were different. John Thomas would later join the Navy and serve throughout the war in the Pacific. Their sister, Tenny Mae, completed the Poole family. Their parents, John McKinley Poole and Marion Lee Ruth Poole, raised their children to value hard work, discipline, and service to others. From an early age, Lafayette stood out. He was athletic, competitive, and intelligent. He attended Taft High School and graduated in 1937. On the football field, he was fast, aggressive, and relentless, traits that made him a standout player. But his abilities were not limited to sports. He was also a strong student with a sharp mind. After high school, he attended Corpus Christi College Academy
an all-boys Catholic preparatory school known for demanding academics. Lafayette thrived there. He applied the same effort to his studies that he did to sports and farm labor. He graduated as class valedictorian in 1938. That achievement opened doors, and Lafayette enrolled at Texas College of Arts and Industries in Kingsville, now Texas A&M University, Kingsville, where he studied engineering. He showed a natural talent for math and mechanical systems, and his future appeared set. But the world was changing. While in school, Lafayette also boxed. He fought in the 165-pound weight class, where his aggressive style, speed, and toughness made him difficult to defeat. Boxing suited him. It demanded quick thinking, controlled aggression, and the ability to take punishment and keep fighting. He compiled an impressive amateur record of 41 wins without a single loss. His success earned him the sectional Golden Gloves Championship in New Orleans. He was invited to compete in the national finals, an opportunity that could have led to a professional boxing career. He turned it down. Engineering mattered to him more than the uncertain life of a prize fighter. Still, the discipline and mindset boxing gave him would later serve him well in combat. By 1941, the world was at war. Germany had overrun most of Europe. Britain stood alone. Japan was expanding across Asia. The United States was officially neutral, but few doubted that war was coming. Young men across America faced a choice: wait to be drafted or enlist and choose their path. Lafayette Poole made his decision. On June 14, 1941, 6 months before Pearl Harbor, he walked into the recruiting office at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, Texas, and enlisted in the United States Army. He was 21 years old, 6 feet 2 inches tall, about 175 pounds, physically fit, mentally sharp, and determined. The Army would change him. It would turn him into a tank commander who would become the most lethal in American history. Poole was assigned to the newly formed 3rd Armored Division at Camp Beauregard, Louisiana. Activated on April 15, 1941, it was part of America's rapid military buildup as war approached. The 3rd Armored Division would earn the nickname Spearhead, a unit that always led the advance, always broke through enemy lines, and always pushed farther than anyone else. Poole was assigned to Company C, 3rd Battalion, 32nd Armored Regiment, serving as a tank commander in 3rd Platoon. That assignment would define his life. The division represented America's commitment to modern mechanized warfare, a form of combat that Germany had already proved deadly effective in Europe. Its structure reflected lessons learned by studying German panzer operations. And soon, Lafayette Poole would take those lessons to the battlefield, where aggression, speed, and instinct would make him a legend.
The division was built to fight as a single, unified force. It combined tank battalions with armored infantry, artillery, engineers, and support units, all trained to move and fight together. Each element supported the others, creating a balanced and powerful formation. The division's main striking strength came from its tank battalions. Early on, these units were equipped with the M3 Lee medium tank. The M3 was a temporary solution, built quickly to meet urgent wartime needs. It carried a 75mm gun mounted in the hull sponson and a smaller 37mm gun in a rotating turret. By the time it entered service, the M3 Lee was already outdated. But in 1941, American industry was not yet able to produce more advanced tanks in large enough numbers. The M4 Sherman, soon to become the standard American medium tank for the rest of the war, was only just entering production when P joined the Army. Training at Camp Beauregard was intense and demanding. P and the other tankers learned every aspect of armored warfare.
They trained to operate their tanks, maintain them, and fight from them under every condition imaginable. Gunnery training was constant. Crews practiced until they could identify targets and fire accurately within seconds. They learned radio procedures to coordinate with other tanks, infantry units, and artillery. They studied German tactics and equipment, learning how enemy panzers fought and where their weaknesses lay. Field exercises were endless, simulated attacks, defenses, and pursuit operations repeated again and again. The Louisiana countryside became their classroom. Its forests, swamps, and rough terrain closely resembled the environments they would later face in Europe. From the beginning, P stood out. His natural aggression, sharp instincts, and intense competitive drive marked him as exceptional. Officers quickly noticed his focus during exercises and his refusal to accept anything less than the best. During gunnery practice, P's tank crew regularly scored among the top in the battalion. In tactical exercises, P showed an instinctive understanding of terrain and enemy positioning that went beyond what could be taught in classrooms. He studied tanks constantly, how they moved, how they fought, and where they were vulnerable. He learned to read terrain like a map, spotting strong firing positions, concealed routes of movement, and escape paths before others even noticed them. Most importantly, he showed strong leadership. The men under his command respected him, they trusted him, they would follow him anywhere. That trust would be proven again and again in combat. P demanded high standards from himself and his crew. He pushed them through constant gunnery drills, driving practice, and tactical training. He was not harsh or unreasonable, he simply understood the truth of combat. The difference between a well-trained crew and an average one was often the difference between life and death. Every second saved in spotting a target meant firing first. Every accurate shot meant one less enemy tank firing back. Every correct radio call meant better support and coordination. P drilled these lessons until they became automatic. Load, aim, fire, reload, spot target, judge distance, adjust fire. These actions became as natural as breathing. His crew would need every bit of that training once they reached combat. When given the opportunity to become a commissioned officer, P refused. Commissioned officers usually commanded from company or battalion level, directing multiple units from command posts. P wanted to fight from inside a tank. He wanted to lead from the front, where he could see the battlefield and make split-second decisions. He wanted to stay close to his crew and close to the fighting. That decision would shape his entire combat career. Normally, staff sergeants did not command platoons in battle, but P's skill, confidence, and aggressive leadership earned the trust of his superiors. Time and again, he was placed in charge of multiple tanks during attacks, missions normally given to lieutenants or captains. Training continued through 1942 and into 1943. The division expanded its training beyond Louisiana, moving to the Desert Training Center in the Mojave Desert of California and Arizona. The wide open spaces and brutal conditions prepared units for possible combat in North Africa. The desert tested both men and machines. Extreme heat, thick dust, and open terrain with no cover pushed crews to their limits. Tank commanders learned to navigate across empty landscapes using dead reckoning. Crews learned to keep their vehicles running as metal expanded, seals failed, and engines overheated. Although the 3rd Armored Division would eventually fight in Europe instead of Africa, the desert training proved invaluable. Afterward, the division moved to Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania, for final preparation before deployment overseas. The rolling hills and forests there closely resembled the terrain of Western Europe. Here, the division perfected combined arms tactics. Tanks advanced alongside infantry. Artillery provided covering fire. Engineers cleared mines and obstacles. Radio discipline improved. Maintenance routines were refined. Weaknesses in organization and tactics were identified and fixed. By late 1943, the 3rd Armored Division was as ready for combat as training could make them. During this long training period, P experienced important moments in his personal life. In December 1922, while home on leave, he married Evelyn Wright. It was a brief moment of normal life and happiness before departing for a war that would define their generation. Evelyn would wait for him throughout the war. Her letters sustained him during the hardest moments of combat. Together, they would raise 8 children, 4 sons and 4 daughters. Their marriage lasted nearly 50 years until P's death, a testament to the bond formed during those short moments together before war separated them. In September 1943, P and the 32nd Armored Regiment boarded troop ships in New York Harbor and sailed for England. The Atlantic crossing took about 2 weeks. Thousands of soldiers were packed into converted passenger ships and cargo vessels, sleeping in cramped conditions, enduring rough seas, and living with the constant threat of German U-boats. The convoy zigzagged across the ocean to avoid submarine attacks. Destroyers escorted the ships, patrolling constantly and dropping depth charges whenever sonar detected possible enemy submarines. The regiment arrived safely in Liverpool in late September 1943. The 3rd Armored Division would spend the next 9 months in England, from September 1943 to June 1944. Training continued as the division prepared for the invasion everyone knew was coming. Units staged near Liverpool and Bristol in Somerset, conducting exercises across the English countryside, working with British forces and receiving final equipment and replacements. The waiting was difficult. Soldiers knew combat was coming, but no one knew when or where. Rumors spread constantly. Security was strict. Training never stopped. During this time, P experienced his first and only defeat in competitive sports. In July 1944, heavyweight boxing champion Joe Louis, known as the Brown Bomber, toured England, putting on exhibition matches for American troops. Joe Louis was one of the greatest boxers of all time, a national symbol of American strength and determination.
His second victory over German boxer Max Schmeling in 1938 had become far more than a sporting event. It was seen around the world as a direct rejection of Nazi racial ideology. Joe Louis had become a symbol of American strength and unity. Now in wartime England, Louis used his fame to lift troop morale. He toured bases and camps, sparring with soldiers in friendly exhibition matches meant purely for entertainment. Most men had no desire to step into a boxing ring with the heavyweight champion of the world. Lafayette Poole did. Always confident, always competitive, Poole volunteered for an exhibition bout. The match was scheduled for July 4, 1944, Independence Day, in Liverpool. It was supposed to be light sparring, nothing serious, just a show for the troops. But once the bell rang, Poole's instincts took over. He attacked aggressively, throwing hard punches and landing several clean shots that surprised the champion. For a moment, it looked like the young sergeant was taking the fight seriously, very seriously. Joe Louis stepped in close, wrapped an arm around Poole, and quietly said, "White man, I'm going to teach you a big lesson." The lesson followed immediately. Louis took control of the bout, using his superior speed, power, and flawless technique. He dominated Poole completely, moving him around the ring at will. Louis could have knocked him out at any moment, but chose not to. Instead, he showed the clear difference between a skilled amateur and a world-class professional. Later, Poole would admit that Joe Louis turned him every which way but loose. But Poole walked away with something more important than a win. He learned that raw strength and aggression were not enough. Even great power could be countered by better timing, better positioning, and better tactics. Skill mattered. Patience mattered. Knowing when to strike mattered. Those lessons would stay with him. June 23, 1944. The port of Weymouth, England. The 3rd Armored Division began boarding ships for the crossing to Normandy. D-Day had taken place 18 days earlier. Allied forces had secured the beaches and were fighting their way inland against fierce German resistance. Now it was time for follow-on units like the 3rd Armored Division to join the fight. Every tank and vehicle was carefully prepared for amphibious landing. Crews waterproofed engines and compartments, sealing every opening to prevent seawater from flooding the vehicles as they moved from landing craft to shore. The preparation was careful and thorough, but the men were tense. Everyone had heard stories about D-Day, about Omaha Beach, about heavy losses, about the brutal fighting in the hedgerows. Now it was their turn. June 24, 1944. Omaha Beach, Normandy, France. The 3rd Armored Division came ashore in steady rain. The beach was a muddy maze of men, vehicles, and equipment moving through crowded assembly areas. Even weeks after the invasion, the beach still showed the damage of battle. Destroyed landing craft lay half submerged in the surf. German bunkers and gun positions littered the cliffs. Huge piles of ammunition, fuel, food, and supplies covered every open space. Military police directed traffic, struggling to keep order as thousands of vehicles moved inland. The air smelled of salt water, diesel fuel, wet earth, and old explosives. Poole's 1st Sherman, an M4A1 armed with a 75mm gun, came ashore without trouble. The waterproofing worked, the engine started, the tank climbed the beach under its own power. Over the next several days, the division assembled inland. Crews removed waterproofing, test-fired weapons, performed maintenance, and prepared for combat. Now, training would be tested. Poole had personally selected every member of his crew. He chose men whose skills and personalities fit together and matched his aggressive style. Corporal Wilbert Richards, known as Baby because of his young-looking face despite being 24 years old, served as driver. Richards stood only 5 feet 4 inches tall, compact and lean, but he was an exceptional driver. Poole liked to say that Baby could parallel park a 33-ton Sherman in downtown New York during rush hour. It was an exaggeration, but not by much. Richards could maneuver the tank through narrow village streets, back up quickly under fire, and position the Sherman at perfect firing angles with unmatched precision. He often drove with his hatch open whenever possible. During training, Richards had once been trapped inside a tank when a hatch jammed. That experience left him deeply afraid of being sealed inside a burning vehicle, a fear shared by all tankers, but one he felt strongly. The open hatch gave him better visibility and a faster escape if the tank was hit, though it also exposed him to shrapnel and small arms fire. Private First Class Bertrand Close, only 17 years old and nicknamed Schoolboy for his wire-rimmed glasses and youthful appearance, served as assistant driver and bow gunner. He operated the .30 caliber Browning machine gun mounted in the front of the tank. Close came from Portland, Oregon. He looked like a teenager because he was a teenager. Slim and young-faced, he seemed out of place in a war zone. Appearances were misleading. With the bow machine gun, Close was deadly. He cut down enemy infantry with controlled, accurate fire. His position allowed him to cover the front and right side of the tank, exactly where German soldiers would try to approach with Panzerfausts or magnetic mines. Close also helped load ammunition during heavy fighting, passing shells quickly to keep the gun firing. Corporal Willis Ohl, 29 years old and nicknamed Groundhog, served as the gunner. He was older than most of the crew and calm by nature, very different from Poole's intensity. Ohl seemed to view the entire war through his gun sight. His face was often marked by the imprint of tanker goggles, his eye always pressed to the scope, ready to fire at any moment. The gunner's job was one of the most demanding in the tank. He had to spot targets instantly, judge distance accurately, choose the right ammunition,
aim while the tank moved, and fire at the exact right moment, all within seconds, often under enemy fire. Ole excelled. His precise shots would destroy tank after tank in the months ahead, proving Poole's confidence in him was well placed. Technician 5th grade Delbert Boggs, 22 years old from Lancaster, Ohio, served as loader. He was nicknamed Jailbird, a name tied to stories about his past. According to crew legend, Boggs had once been arrested on manslaughter charges and given a choice by the court, prison or the army. He chose the army. Whether the story was fully true or partly exaggerated, it fit Boggs well. He was tough, unshakable, and completely dependable under fire. The loader's job was brutal. A single 75mm shell weighed around 25 pounds. In heavy combat, the loader might handle dozens of rounds, selecting the right type on Poole's command, loading fast despite the cramped space and violent movement of the tank, and immediately preparing the next shell. Every second mattered, and soon every second would mean the difference between life and death.
Boggs was thin, but he had tough, wiry strength and remarkable endurance. He could load shells quickly and reliably, giving Poole's tank a rate of fire faster than most other Shermans. Speed mattered, and Boggs delivered it every time. These 4 men, led by Poole, called themselves the Pups. They called their commander War Daddy. The nickname captured both their affection and respect for the man who led them into danger again and again. It first emerged during training. Poole's intense focus on combat readiness, combined with his genuine concern for his crew's safety, created a unique relationship. He was both their leader and their protector. Poole was younger than Ole and not much older than the rest, but his presence filled the tank. His confidence, determination, and natural authority made him the unquestioned center of the crew. They trusted him completely. That trust would be tested many times in the months ahead. During training, Poole's crew regularly ranked at the top of the division in gunnery efficiency. Their teamwork was flawless. Each man knew his role and trusted the others to do theirs. When Poole gave a fire command, the response was instant. Driver, stop. Gunner, sabot, tank front, on the way. Boom. From spotting a target to firing could take less than 5 seconds with a good crew. Poole's crew could do it in 3. That speed saved their lives over and over again. Poole's tactical philosophy was simple and ruthless, shaped by years of study and careful observation of German armored warfare. Shoot first, shoot to kill, always move forward, never retreat. He believed in closing with the enemy, fighting at close range where the Sherman's strengths, mobility, fast reloads, and a well-trained crew could overcome German advantages in armor and firepower. German tanks like the Panther and Tiger had thicker armor and more powerful guns. They could destroy a Sherman from distances where the Sherman could not penetrate their frontal armor. Poole's solution was simple: never fight at long range. He closed the distance aggressively, maneuvering for side shots where even a Panther's armor could be pierced. His goal was to overwhelm German crews with fast, accurate fire before they could use their superior guns effectively. Poole was claustrophobic. He preferred to fight standing in the open hatch or riding on top of the turret rather than sealed inside the tank. This was both a weakness and a strength. The danger was obvious. Exposed in the turret, Poole was vulnerable to shrapnel, small arms fire, and the shock of nearby explosions. Many tank commanders were killed by fragments or bullets that would never have penetrated the tank's armor if they had stayed buttoned up.
but the advantage was enormous. From the open hatch, Poole could see far more than commanders looking through narrow periscopes. He could spot threats sooner, identify targets faster, and understand the battlefield as a whole. He saw the fight in 3 dimensions. That awareness often made the difference between firing first or being fired upon. In tank combat, firing first usually meant surviving. Poole's battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Walter Richardson, was also from Texas. The 2 men shared a similar aggressive mindset and quickly developed mutual respect. Richardson recognized Poole's exceptional ability and gave him greater responsibility despite his rank as a staff sergeant. He once said that Poole rode his tank like a bucking bronco, always exposed, always vulnerable, always leading from the front. That leadership inspired his crew and made Poole the natural choice for spearhead attacks. Again and again, Richardson assigned Poole the most dangerous missions, leading attacks into the strongest enemy positions. Poole never refused. He never hesitated. He climbed into his tank and moved forward. Before going into combat, Poole's Sherman needed a name. Tank crews often named their vehicles, turning cold steel into something personal, something they trusted with their lives. Poole chose In the Mood, named for Glenn Miller's famous swing song. The song had been a massive hit in 1940 and remained popular with American troops. Its fast tempo and upbeat energy fit Poole perfectly. Aggressive, confident, relentless. The name would soon become legendary. June 29, 1944. Villers-Fossard, France. Combat Command A of the 3rd Armored Division received orders to reduce a German salient northeast of Saint-Lô. The position was held by a reinforced Fusilier Battalion of the 353rd Infantry Division. This would be the division's first combat action. It would also be Poole's first taste of battle. The objective was a salient nearly 3,000 yards deep, protecting the town of Villers-Fossard, east of the Vire River and north of Saint-Lô. The Germans had prepared strong defenses, using the Normandy hedgerows to full advantage. The hedgerows were one of the greatest challenges American forces faced in France. Built up over centuries, they consisted of thick earthen banks 3 to 4 feet high, topped with dense bushes and small trees. They bordered every field and road, turning the countryside into a maze of natural fortresses. German infantry and anti-tank guns hid behind the hedgerows, invisible until attackers were dangerously close. Tanks trying to climb over them exposed their thin belly armor to enemy fire. Early American attacks had been costly as units learned these lessons the hard way. Engineers eventually found a solution. They cut steel beams from the German beach obstacles meant to stop the D-Day invasion and welded them onto the front of Sherman tanks. These modified tanks, called Rhino tanks, could smash through hedgerows without climbing over them. This innovation changed everything. American armor could now move freely through the hedgerow country while keeping its armor protected. On June 29, 0900 hours, Combat Command A of the 3rd Armored Division received orders to launch the attack. Task Forces X and Y advanced side by side towards Villers-Fossard. Poole's platoon moved with Task Force Y on the right flank. American artillery opened the assault, pounding German positions for 30 minutes. The air filled with screaming shells and heavy explosions. Then the order came: advance. Poole's Sherman rolled forward with the other tanks, grinding through the Normandy countryside. Visibility was poor, often limited to the next hedgerow, sometimes only 50 yards away. Radio traffic filled Poole's headset. Tank commanders reported contacts, called for artillery, and coordinated movements. The sharp crack of German 75mm anti-tank guns echoed across the fields, answered by the deeper boom of American tank fire. Black smoke drifted from burning vehicles. Poole spotted German vehicles through gaps in the hedgerows. Half-track, 10 o'clock, 300 yards. He gave the command. Ole fired a 75mm high-explosive round. It hit squarely. The German vehicle erupted in flames. By the end of the first day, Poole's crew had destroyed 3 enemy vehicles and killed more than 70 German soldiers. The chaos and violence of armored combat were exactly what Poole had trained for, but no training could fully prepare anyone for the reality. The noise was overwhelming. The fear was real. Adrenaline distorted time. Yet Poole's training took over. He pushed forward aggressively, refusing to give ground. His crew responded with calm discipline, performing their roles exactly as they had practiced countless times. Then came the moment every tank crew feared. In the mood entered the village of Le Désert, part of the Villers-Fossades combat area, moving down a narrow street lined with stone buildings.
The village was supposedly clear of enemy forces, but intelligence was never complete, and conditions changed rapidly in combat. As the Sherman rolled cautiously down the narrow street, a German soldier stepped from a doorway less than 50 yards away, a Panzerfaust already braced on his shoulder. He aimed and fired. The Panzerfaust was a crude but devastatingly effective weapon, a disposable launcher firing a shaped charge warhead capable of penetrating over 200 millimeters of armor, more than enough to kill a Sherman. The rocket motor ignited with a violent whoosh, and the warhead streaked across the short distance, slamming into In the Mood's side armor with a metallic crash that rang through the crew compartment. The shaped charge detonated on impact, forming a jet of superheated metal that punched through the armor and sprayed molten fragments inside the tank. The Sherman shuddered violently. Smoke flooded the interior. Warning alarms screamed. Poole did not hesitate. "Bail out!" All 5 men moved instantly, training overriding fear. Poole was first out through the commander's hatch, followed closely by Ola. Richards and Close scrambled out through the driver's and assistant driver's hatches in the front hull. Boggs forced himself through the loader's hatch. They cleared the tank seconds before fire could spread or the ammunition could cook off. The crew had survived their first tank loss without casualties, but only barely. In the Mood, the first Sherman to bear that name, was destroyed. They had lasted exactly 5 days in combat. Poole and his crew received their replacement tank, an M4A1 armed with the new 76mm gun, the M4A1W76. Poole was the first tank commander in his regiment to receive the upgraded variant, a quiet acknowledgement of his performance at Villers-Fossades. The new tank represented a major improvement. The W designation stood for wet stowage, a critical safety innovation in which ammunition racks were surrounded by water-filled containers mixed with ethylene glycol and a rust inhibitor known as AmmuDamp. This system dramatically reduced the risk of catastrophic fires when the tank was penetrated. Earlier Shermans had earned a grim reputation for burning when hit, earning the nickname Ronson from German tankers after the cigarette lighter that advertised "lights first time, every time." Wet stowage changed that. Crew survivability increased dramatically. The 76mm M1 was a quantum leap in firepower over the older 75mm.
The 75mm M3 could penetrate a Panther's frontal armor only at extremely short ranges and under ideal conditions. The 76mm, by contrast, could penetrate Panther side armor at up to 2,000 yards and frontal armor at ranges approaching 500 yards with armor-piercing ammunition. Against German Panzer IVs, the most common German medium tank, the gun was effective at even longer distances. The trade-off was a less powerful high-explosive round, making the 76mm slightly less effective against infantry and soft targets. But the increased anti-armor capability was invaluable. Poole immediately had "In the Mood" painted on the new hull, continuing the tradition. The crew climbed aboard, learning the subtle differences. The longer, heavier gun altered the tank's balance. Ammunition stowage was arranged differently. Mastering these details was essential. They needed to make the tank their own. Over the next 6 weeks, Poole and his crew would write one of the most remarkable chapters in American armored warfare history. Normandy's hedgerows tested every tanker's nerve and skill. The rhythm of battle was brutally repetitive. Advance to a hedge, take fire from the next one, call for artillery, assault through under covering fire, clear the field of infantry, then repeat, field by field, day after day. Visibility was measured in yards. Ambushes came from every direction. German 75mm and 88mm anti-tank guns waited behind stone walls and hedgerows, barrels carefully concealed until American tanks rolled into killing range. German infantry crept forward at night with Panzerfausts, hunting side and rear armor at point-blank distances. Casualties among tank crews were staggering. Poole, however, possessed an exceptional tactical instinct. He developed an almost supernatural sense for terrain, where an enemy gun should be, where a defender would naturally choose to fight. He studied shadows, vegetation patterns, and sight lines. He learned to spot the subtle disturbances that betrayed prepared positions. He thought like the enemy, and that gave him the edge. He often saw threats before they saw him and struck first, destroying enemy guns before they could fire effectively. Near the town of Les Mesnil-Herman, advancing at dusk, Poole was about to order a halt when suddenly a shape emerged in the darkness just 50 feet ahead, a German 40mm anti-aircraft gun emplantment. Its crew was relaxed, moving openly, unaware that a Sherman was already upon them. Poole knew he had seconds. Without warning, without a radio call that might give them away, he shouted, "Gunner, fire!" Ola was already on the site. His hands moved instantly. The 76mm roared, sending an armor-piercing round straight into the German position. The shell struck squarely, obliterating the gun and killing or wounding the crew instantly. From spotting the target to impact, perhaps 3 seconds had passed. That was the hallmark of Poole's crew. Training had become instinct. Decisions came faster than conscious thought. Another night engagement near Colombières, France, would nearly end in disaster, but instead would demonstrate Poole's tactical brilliance and his crew's extraordinary skill.
Poole's platoon advanced cautiously through the darkness, moving hedge to hedge in the claustrophobic bocage. Night operations were among the most dangerous missions tankers faced. Visibility was measured in yards, even with the Sherman's crude infrared equipment. Enemy infantry could slip dangerously close under cover of darkness, and friendly fire incidents were common as units lost track of one another's positions. Yet the tactical situation demanded night movement, and Poole led his platoon forward. Without warning, In the Mood nearly collided with a German Panther tank. The two vehicles emerged from adjacent gaps in the hedgerow and found themselves facing one another at a range of barely 30 yards. The Panther was one of the most feared armored vehicles in the German arsenal. Its long-barreled 75mm KWK-42 gun could penetrate a Sherman's frontal armor at ranges exceeding 2,000 yards. Conversely, the Panther's frontal armor was nearly impervious to the Sherman's 76mm gun, except at extremely close range. On paper, the Panther was superior in almost every measurable category, save mechanical reliability. German tankers derisively referred to the Sherman as a Zippo, claiming it burned easily, while American rounds bounced harmlessly off German armor. But combat was not fought on paper. Both commanders spotted each other simultaneously. Both issued fire commands. The Panther fired first, twice in rapid succession. In the confusion and darkness, both shots missed. One shell passed just over In the Mood's turret with a violent crack of displaced air. The second struck the ground in front of the Sherman and ricocheted upward, missing the belly armor by inches. Ola's reply was instantaneous. At point-blank range, he fired a single armor-piercing round. The shell struck the Panther's turret ring, the vulnerable seam where turret met hull, and punched through. Inside the turret, the round detonated, igniting ammunition and killing the crew instantly. The German tank erupted in flames, flooding the hedgerow with orange light. The sudden blaze destroyed what remained of Poole's night vision, but it also silhouetted other German vehicles in the area. Poole reacted instantly. He ordered his platoon to engage additional targets while backing In the Mood away from the burning Panther before its ammunition detonated catastrophically. The entire engagement had lasted perhaps 10 seconds. Poole had defeated a technically superior tank with faster reactions, superior crew coordination, and accurate fire. Word of the kill spread quickly, first through the battalion, then the division. American tank crews feared Panthers and Tigers. Stories of invulnerable German supertanks circulated widely, undermining morale. Poole's victory shattered that myth. German tanks could be killed. With aggression, disciplined crew drill, and the will to close the range, American tankers could overcome inferior armor and guns. Poole's example emboldened others. July 26, 1944. Operation Cobra. The operation opened with one of the most concentrated aerial bombardments in military history. Over 1,500 heavy bombers and 380 medium bombers dropped nearly 4,000 tons of bombs on German positions south of Saint-Lô in just a few hours. The goal was simple: pulverize German defenses and create a breach through which American armor could pour into open country. The plan worked, despite tragic friendly fire incidents that killed more than 100 American soldiers, including Lieutenant General Leslie McNair. German defensive positions ceased to exist as coherent fortifications. Survivors were stunned, disorganized, and incapable of mounting coordinated resistance. On July 29th, the 3rd Armored Division punched through the shattered line and surged south. After weeks of grinding hedgerow fighting, where progress had been measured in hundreds of yards per day, the war suddenly transformed into a war of movement. Tanks raced down open roads at 20 and 30 miles per hour, covering more ground in hours than they had in weeks. German units bypassed and isolated by the rapid advance attempted to escape, only to find escape routes cut. Thousands surrendered. Those who resisted were crushed by American mobility and firepower. Poole's tanks spearheaded attack after attack. Being the spearhead was both an honor and a death sentence. The lead tank was always the first to encounter enemy fire, mines, Panzerfausts, and ambushes. Casualty rates for spearhead tanks were catastrophic. Poole volunteered anyway. His crew never questioned him. They trusted War Daddy to get them through. And somehow, against all odds, In the Mood kept rolling, kept fighting, kept surviving. Near Dinant, Belgium, during the pursuit across France and into Belgium, Poole again distinguished himself while acting as platoon leader. The division had advanced so rapidly that a staff sergeant was now commanding 5 tanks. There were no officers available.
As his column advanced along a narrow road, it suddenly took fire from the left flank. German half-tracks and armored cars, attempting to escape encirclement, had blundered into the American advance. Poole ordered the column to continue forward while he swung in the mood toward the threat. The crew quickly located the German unit, perhaps a dozen vehicles struggling cross-country through fields and wooded terrain. Poole closed aggressively and opened fire. In rapid succession, In the Mood destroyed 6 enemy vehicles. The German column dissolved into chaos, some fleeing, others firing wildly and ineffectively. Then a radio call broke in. A German Panther had appeared ahead and was engaging the American column. Poole faced a split-second decision: finish off the shattered vehicles to his flank or race back to confront the far more dangerous threat. He chose the Panther. Driver, maximum speed. Richards pushed the Sherman to nearly 25 miles per hour, faster than was safe on the narrow road, but Poole knew seconds mattered. As they approached the contact area, Boggs loaded armor-piercing rounds, while Ola prepared the gun. Poole spotted the Panther hull down behind a slight rise, methodically engaging American tanks. 2 Shermans were already burning. He saw crewmen bailing out through smoke and flame. The Panther's commander was focused forward, completely unaware of In the Mood approaching from the flank. Poole recognized the mistake instantly. Never interrupt an enemy when he is making a mistake.
Odila traversed the turret smoothly, settling the crosshairs just below the Panther's turret ring on its exposed side armor. Before the German crew could react, the 76mm gun fired. The round covered the short distance in less than a second. The armor-piercing projectile struck the Panther's side and penetrated cleanly, detonating inside the crew compartment. The German tank lurched violently. Smoke poured from its hatches, followed moments later by flame. The crew attempted to bail out, but the internal blast had killed or stunned most of them. Only one man managed to escape before the ammunition detonated catastrophically, ripping the turret free and throwing it clear of the hull. Poole had destroyed his second Panther, not through superior firepower, but through maneuver, positioning, and flawless crew execution. He had forced a flank shot where his gun was effective and his crew had performed perfectly. The American column resumed its advance, with In the Mood now in the lead, the spearhead position earned by demonstrated capability rather than assigned duty. August 7, 1944, the Falaise Gap. The battle for the Falaise Pocket was one of the most decisive engagements of the Normandy campaign. Allied forces were attempting to encircle and destroy the German 7th Army and 5th Panzer Army, trapping them in a shrinking pocket near Falaise. If successful, the encirclement would annihilate the main German forces in Normandy and open the way for a rapid Allied advance across France. The plan required American forces pushing north from the south to link up with British and Canadian forces driving south from the north, sealing the gap. Poole's tank led Task Force Y of Combat Command A during the closing of the pocket, with Lieutenant Colonel Richardson monitoring the radio traffic from his command position. The fighting was chaotic and desperate. German units trapped inside the pocket launched frantic breakout attempts, throwing everything they had at American lines. At the same time, German forces already west of the encirclement attacked from the outside, trying to smash open an escape corridor. The result was a massive, confused battle, meeting engagements, ambushes, and close-range firefights scattered across the Norman countryside. As Poole's column advanced, they encountered groups of German soldiers fleeing on foot, having abandoned vehicles and heavy weapons in desperation. Richardson listened as Poole's voice came over the radio. "Ain't got the heart to kill 'em." The impulse was genuine and spoke to Poole's humanity beneath his aggressive reputation.
The fleeing soldiers posed no immediate threat to his tank. Richardson knew Poole understood the situation fully. Seconds later, the chatter of Close's .30 caliber bow machine gun cut through the radio traffic. Poole's voice followed. "Watch the bastards run. Give it to 'em close." The hesitation had lasted only a moment. German soldiers allowed to escape would regroup, be rearmed, and return to the fight. Poole's mission was not mercy, it was the destruction of the enemy's ability to resist. He carried it out without hesitation, despite personal conflict. It was a moment that captured the moral complexity of combat, where decent men are forced to commit terrible acts in service of necessary objectives. From August 29th to 31st, 1944, Poole commanded the lead tank in a series of actions that would earn him the Distinguished Service Cross, America's second highest award for valor. The official citation, approved by division headquarters, summarized 3 days of extraordinary combat. Poole advanced far ahead of his task force, repeatedly outdistancing supporting units in his relentless push forward. Enemy contact was expected, but the fluid situation meant neither friendly nor enemy dispositions were clearly known. Over the course of those 3 days, often operating alone or with only 1 or 2 other tanks, Poole's crew destroyed 4 German tanks in separate engagements. The first was a Panzer IV, destroyed from ambush as it attempted to cross a road. The second was a Sturmgeschütz assault gun, eliminated at close range after a brief running fight through a village. The third and fourth were Panthers, destroyed in a single engagement after Poole's tank came under simultaneous fire from both vehicles and defeated them through superior shooting and disciplined crew coordination. In addition to enemy armor, Poole's crew destroyed 3 anti-tank guns, approximately 50 unarmored vehicles, including half-tracks, trucks, and staff cars, and killed or wounded a significant number of enemy personnel. The citation stated that Poole's unflinching courage and inspired leadership in the face of devastating hostile fire permitted the rapid advance of his task force with minimal casualties. His actions were described as exemplifying the highest traditions of the military service. The language understated the danger. Advancing deliberately into the most exposed position, Poole drew enemy fire to reveal gun positions. Every anti-tank weapon he engaged had fired at "in the mood" first. Every German tank he engaged was capable, on paper, of killing his Sherman before he could respond. Poole survived through skill, aggression, disciplined crew work, and no small measure of luck. Though awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, many who witnessed his actions believed he deserved the Medal of Honor. Over those 3 days, Poole demonstrated that superior tactics and crew performance could overcome numerical and technical inferiority. The Sherman was outmatched in armor and firepower by German tanks, but Poole proved that battles were won by crews, not specifications. His example spread through the division. Other commanders began fighting more aggressively, closing the range where American maneuverability, coordination, and rate of fire could prevail. August 17, 1944, somewhere in France. Combat Command was clearing the last pockets of German resistance during the rapid exploitation across France. The war had become a pursuit, with German forces retreating towards their borders and American armor racing to destroy them before new defensive lines could be formed. In the Mood led the attack into another village when disaster struck from an unexpected direction. American P-38 Lightning bombers appeared overhead, hunting for German armor. The P-38, with its distinctive twin booms and central cockpit nacelle, was usually a welcome sight. Aircraft provided close air support, attacked retreating columns, and helped ground units locate enemy positions.
But on this day, the pilots made a fatal mistake. From several thousand feet in the air, all tanks looked the same. The distinctive silhouettes that allowed ground forces to distinguish friend from foe were harder to identify from above.
The P-38 pilot saw tanks advancing through a French village and assumed they were German. He called out the target and rolled into his attack run, his wingmen following close behind. The P-38 Lightning carried rockets, brutally effective weapons when fired in diving attacks against armored vehicles. Poole saw the aircraft drop toward his position and instantly recognized the danger. He grabbed the radio handset, shouting frantically to identify his unit as American, but the fighters were already committed. The first aircraft fired. Rockets streaked downward, trailing white smoke. Poole had no time to maneuver, no room to escape. The impacts came almost simultaneously. One rocket struck the turret, another slammed into the engine compartment. Explosions tore across the tank. "Bail out!" The order was immediate. Fire and smoke engulfed the Sherman as the crew evacuated with the speed born of repetition and discipline. All 5 men escaped, though several suffered minor injuries from blast concussion and the desperate scramble from the burning vehicle. They cleared the tank seconds before ammunition began cooking off, flames and secondary explosions erupting skyward. In the Mood, the second Sherman to bear the name, was destroyed. Not by German fire, by American rockets. The loss devastated Poole and his crew. They had survived nearly 2 months of constant combat, destroyed dozens of enemy vehicles, fought across France, and endured ambush after ambush, only to lose their tank to friendly air support. The P-38 pilots, upon learning of the mistake, were reportedly distraught. Friendly fire was one of the tragic realities of modern warfare, where speed, confusion, and split-second decisions could produce catastrophic errors. Understanding the cause did nothing to lessen the blow. For the second time in less than 2 months, Poole and his crew stood beside the wreckage of their tank. Surviving even 1 tank loss was statistically unlikely. Surviving 2 bordered on the miraculous. But Poole's luck was not yet spent. Within days, the crew received their 3rd Sherman, another M4A1 76W. Once again, Poole had "In the Mood" painted on the hull. The name had become legend within the 3rd Armored Division, synonymous with relentless aggression, extraordinary results, and a crew that seemed charmed despite constant exposure to danger. The 3rd In the Mood carried Poole and his crew through another month of combat, through the race to the German border, through the penetration of the Siegfried Line, and toward the battle that would end Poole's war. September 19, 1944. The 3rd Armored Division advanced rapidly across France and into Belgium, pursuing German forces retreating toward the Siegfried Line, Germany's fortified western defensive system. Known to the Germans as the West Wall, the line consisted of bunkers, dragon's teeth, minefields, and strongpoints stretching hundreds of miles. Built in the 1930s, the fortifications had been neglected during years of German offensive success. Now, with Allied forces approaching German soil, the Wehrmacht scrambled to man the line and restore its defenses. A race developed. If the Allies could strike before the line was fully occupied and organized, they might break into Germany itself before winter halted operations. If the Germans succeeded in establishing strong defenses, the Allies faced months of costly fighting. Poole's tank continued to lead attacks during the pursuit. His tally climbed relentlessly. By early September, Poole had personally destroyed more than 250 enemy vehicles, including at least 12 confirmed tank kills. The number of German soldiers killed by his crew exceeded 1,000, though the chaos of battle made precise counts impossible. His crew had also captured approximately 250 prisoners, often entire groups that surrendered rather than face the aggressive American tank that seemed to appear everywhere at once.
Poole's reputation became legendary within the division. Tank commanders studied his tactics. Infantry units requested his support for difficult assaults, knowing War Daddy would lead from the front. Division headquarters recognized Poole not only as a lethal combat leader, but as a symbol, proof that American armor could dominate through skill and aggression. They also understood something else. Poole's survival was becoming statistically improbable. In mid-September, division headquarters made a decision. Poole and his crew would be sent home to the United States for a war bonds tour. They had earned the respite. 3 tank losses, 21 major attacks, a combat record unmatched by any American tank crew. Their story would inspire Americans at home and help fund the war's final push. The orders were issued. Poole and his crew were to complete one final mission. September 19, 1944, Musterbusch, Germany. The mission began in darkness. Combat Command A was advancing toward Aachen, the first major German city to face Allied assault. The approach required clearing a series of villages guarding the western approaches. Musterbusch lay roughly 6 miles from the city, a small cluster of buildings converted into a defensive strongpoint. Poole's orders were explicit and protective. Do not spearhead. Stay on the flank. Provide fire support. Avoid unnecessary risk. Division headquarters wanted Poole and his crew alive for the journey home. Poole understood the orders, but 3 months of combat taught him a hard truth. In tank warfare, there was no such thing as a safe position. The attack began at first light. American tanks advanced with infantry moving alongside to clear buildings and suppress anti-tank teams. German resistance was immediate and intense. Artillery slammed into advancing formations. Mortars burst among the tanks. The sharp crack of German 88s echoed across the battlefield as Shermans began to burn. Poole's tank advanced on the flank as ordered, laying down covering fire. The crew worked with the seamless efficiency of veterans. Ola scanned for targets. Boggs was ready with ammunition. Richards maneuvered precisely where Poole directed. Close watched the flanks with his bow gun. Poole stood exposed in the commander's hatch, directing fire and monitoring the radio. But one man was missing that morning. Willis O'Leary was not in the tank.
Ola had been temporarily transferred back to the United States as part of the Army's routine rotation policy, designed to give experienced combat veterans respite from the front and to use their hard-earned knowledge to train new crews. In his place, manning the main gun for this final mission was Private First Class Paul Kenneth King, a 20-year-old gunner from Anderson County, Tennessee. King was capable and trained, but he lacked Ola's 3 months of continuous combat experience with Poole's crew. The instinctive synchronization the original crew had developed through dozens of engagements was slightly diminished. No fault of King's, but the difference mattered in tank combat measured in seconds. Still, King did his best to meet the exceptional standards expected aboard In the Mood. The attack pushed into Musterbusch itself. Buildings offered perfect concealment for German defenders. Every window, doorway, and rubble pile could hide a Panzerfaust team or a machine gun nest. The fighting became close and brutal. Shermans fired high-explosive rounds into suspected enemy strongpoints, while infantry cleared houses room by room. German soldiers fought desperately. This was German soil now, not occupied territory, and they knew retreat was no longer an option. Poole's tank reached a street intersection that offered good fields of fire down multiple avenues. It was a strong supporting position, protected, flexible, and ideal for covering the main advance. For a brief moment, the battle seemed under control. American forces were pushing forward. German resistance was being crushed. Poole might survive this final mission and make it home. Then the moment shattered. A German Panther, hidden in a carefully prepared firing position, opened fire. Its commander had waited patiently, allowing American tanks to move into his killing zone. He selected Poole's Sherman as his primary target, whether because he recognized the in-the-mood markings, judged it the most dangerous tank present, or simply followed sound tactical instinct. The Panther's long-barreled 75mm KWK-42 fired twice in rapid succession. Both rounds struck with devastating precision. The first armor-piercing shell punched through the turret, detonating inside the fighting compartment. The second hit almost simultaneously, tearing into the hull and destroying internal systems. The blast inside the turret killed Private First Class Paul Kenneth King instantly. The young gunner from Tennessee, filling in on what was meant to be a safer assignment, died in a flash of superheated metal and explosive force. He never had a chance to react. Poole, standing exposed in the commander's hatch, was slammed by shrapnel and blast concussion. Metal fragments shredded his right leg, inflicting catastrophic trauma. The confined explosions stunned him, but instinct, honed by months of combat, took over. Bail out. The surviving crew reacted instantly. Richards and Close escaped through the front hull hatches, Richards forcing himself through the driver's position despite his terror of being trapped. Boggs fought his way out through the loader's hatch, wounded but moving. Poole tried to climb out. His shattered leg would not support him. He struggled, fighting shock and pain, knowing the tank could explode at any moment. Then the crippled Sherman lurched forward into a shell crater. The sudden movement threw Poole partially out of the turret, but pinned him against the hatch rim. His crew turned back. Ignoring the danger, they hauled their commander free and dragged him clear of In the Mood just as ammunition began cooking off inside the hull. They had seconds to spare. Poole was conscious but in shock. His right leg was mangled beyond repair. Blood loss was severe. The crew called for medics and did what they could until help arrived. Within minutes, medics stabilized Poole and evacuated him toward a field hospital. The crew watched as War Daddy was driven away. They had survived 3 tank losses together. They had fought 83 consecutive days of combat. They had destroyed 258 enemy vehicles and killed more than 1,000 German soldiers. But Paul Kenneth King was dead, and Poole's war was over. Poole moved through the medical evacuation system from field hospital to base hospital and eventually back to the United States. The damage to his right leg was irreparable. Surgeons amputated it 8 inches above the knee, an operation that saved his life but ended his career as a tank commander. Recovery was long and painful. Poole endured repeated surgeries, fought infections, and learned to walk again with a prosthetic leg. But he lived. The final record of his combat service was without precedent in American armored warfare. 83 days of continuous combat, 258 enemy vehicles destroyed, 12 confirmed tank kills, over 1,000 enemy soldiers killed or wounded, approximately 250 prisoners captured, 21 major attacks led, almost always from the most exposed position. 3 tanks lost, 2 previously survived intact. Poole received the Distinguished Service Cross, the Legion of Merit, the Silver Star, and the Purple Heart. Belgium awarded him its highest honors for the liberation of the country. Decades later, France named him a Chevalier of the Legion of Honor. He was twice nominated for the Medal of Honor. One nomination was reportedly lost amid the chaos of the war's final months. The second was formally reviewed and rejected. The official reasoning stated that tanks were crew-served weapons, and therefore individual heroism in armored combat did not qualify,
an infantry-centric view that failed to recognize the decisive role of tank commanders. Many who served with Poole considered the decision a grave injustice. Measured against the broader context of World War II, his record stands alone. The United States built nearly 49,000 Sherman tanks during the war. Germany produced roughly 6,000 Panthers and 1,350 Tigers. Yet no American tank commander achieved what Lafayette G. Poole did in less than 3 months of combat. Not through superior machines, not through luck alone, but through leadership, aggression, tactical brilliance, and a crew willing to follow him to hell.
On paper, German tanks were superior in both armor and firepower. The Panther's 75mm KWK-42 Dun could destroy a Sherman at ranges exceeding 2,000 yards, while the Sherman's 76mm gun required under 1,000 yards to reliably penetrate Panther frontal armor. The Tiger's 88mm gun was even more formidable. Yet Lafayette, War Daddy Poole, proved that superior tactics, crew training, and aggressive leadership could overcome technical disadvantages. His 12 confirmed tank kills included multiple Panthers, the most feared German tank encountered by American forces. Poole destroyed these technically superior vehicles through clever positioning, fast reactions, and seamless teamwork. His example inspired an entire generation of American tankers to fight aggressively, closing the range where American advantages in reliability, rate of fire, and crew skill could overcome thinner armor and weaker guns. After recovering from his wounds and learning to walk with a prosthetic leg, Poole faced a choice. He could accept a medical discharge and return to civilian life in Texas, an understandable decision after giving so much to his country. But Poole loved the Army. It had become his life, his career, his identity. From a farm boy with little expectation beyond agriculture, he had risen to become the most successful tank commander in American history. He re-enlisted in July 1948, choosing to continue serving despite his disability. The Army recognized his value, assigning him to training and advisory roles where his combat experience could benefit future tankers. Poole taught armored tactics, gunnery, and leadership, passing on lessons that had cost others their lives. He retired from the Army on September 19, 1960, exactly 16 years to the day after his final battle at Münsterbusch. The coincidence seemed fitting. He retired as a Chief Warrant Officer too, a testament to both technical expertise and leadership. His career spanned 19 years, including the 3 months of combat that had defined him. In retirement, Poole settled in Keene, Texas, near Fort Hood, one of the Army's premier armor training centers. He remained connected to the military community, attending reunions of the 3rd Armored Division, corresponding with fellow veterans, and occasionally speaking to soldiers about his experiences. He was also a devoted family man, raising 8 children with his wife, Evelyn, 4 sons and 4 daughters. Their marriage, begun during a brief leave in December 1942, endured through the hardships of war and military life. Tragedy would touch Poole's family in a way that echoed his own wartime experiences. His son, Captain Jerry Lynn Poole Sr., followed his father into military service, joining the Army Special Forces. Jerry served in Vietnam during its most intense period, leading reconnaissance teams deep into enemy territory as part of MAVS, Military Assistance Command, Vietnam, Studies and Observations Group. On March 24, 1970, Captain Poole was leading RT Pennsylvania, a reconnaissance team operating approximately 14 miles inside Cambodia in Ratanakiri province, surveying North Vietnamese supply routes. Their helicopter came under heavy enemy fire, was hit and exploded.
All 7 soldiers aboard were killed. Captain Poole was 29 years old. His body remained missing in action for over 25 years. The search for Captain Poole became part of a long-term effort to account for American servicemen lost in Southeast Asia. On April 12, 1995, a recovery team located remains believed to be from the crash. The remains were transported to the U.S. Army Central Identification Laboratory in Hawaii, where forensic specialists used dental records, DNA analysis, and other methods to identify them. On June 20, 1991, more than 31 years after the crash, the remains were positively identified as Captain Jerry Lynn Poole Sr. He was buried with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery, his name finally removed from the courts of the missing at the Honolulu Memorial. For Lafayette Poole, the loss of his son was devastating. He understood the nature of military service, the risks soldiers accepted, and the reality of death in combat, but understanding did not lessen the grief. Poole passed away on May 30, 1991, in Keene, Texas, at 71 years old, having survived nearly 47 years after being wounded at Münsterbusch. He was buried with military honors, recognized as one of America's greatest tank commanders. Poole's legacy endured through the soldiers he trained, the tactics he perfected, and the example he set for leadership in armored warfare. In 1993, 2 years after his death, Fort Knox, Kentucky, the home of Army armor training, dedicated its tank driver simulator hall in his honor. The facility was informally named the SSG Lafayette Poole Room, ensuring that every tanker trained at Fort Knox would know the story of War Daddy and his crew. Lieutenant Colonel Olin M. Brewster, who had served with Poole in the 3rd Armored Division during World War II, gave the dedication speech. Brewster spoke of Poole's courage, tactical brilliance, devotion to his crew, and lasting impact on American armored warfare. Poole's story reached a broader audience in 2014 with the release of the film Fury starring Brad Pitt. The movie's main character, a tank commander named War Daddy, was explicitly patterned after Lafayette Poole. The Texas State Historical Association confirmed that the character was based on Poole's combat experiences and leadership style. While Hollywood dramatized some events, the film faithfully captured the brutal reality of tank combat, the numerical and technical disadvantages faced by American crews, and the aggressive tactics that men like Poole used to overcome them.
The film's depiction of a Sherman tank crew fighting against overwhelming odds, using superior tactics and seamless crew work to defeat technically superior German tanks, captured the essence of Poole's combat philosophy. War Daddy's aggressive leadership, his refusal to retreat, and his determination to close with the enemy and destroy them before they could bring their superior firepower to bear, came directly from Poole's documented style and the eyewitness accounts of soldiers who served with him in the 3rd Armored Division. Poole's legacy extends far beyond films and memorial halls. His combat record remains unmatched in American military history. No other American tank commander in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, or any subsequent conflict has approached Poole's tally of 258 enemy vehicles destroyed in just 83 days of combat. The statistical improbability of his achievements becomes even clearer when viewed in context. The average Sherman tank in the European theater survived roughly 11 days of combat before being knocked out or destroyed. Poole's crew survived 83 days across 3 different tanks, continuing to fight effectively after each loss. The average American tank crew destroyed between 1 and 3 enemy vehicles during their entire service. Poole's success was not due to superior equipment or overwhelming force, but stemmed from fundamental principles of armored warfare that he understood intuitively and applied ruthlessly. Aggressive maneuver to close the range where German technical advantages became less decisive. Superior crew training, allowing faster target acquisition, more accurate shooting, and sound tactical decisions under extreme pressure. Absolute refusal to yield ground or break contact, forcing German crews to fight at close range where American advantages in rate of fire and crew coordination were decisive. And a willingness to accept risk and lead from the front, inspiring subordinates and forcing enemies to confront an aggressive threat that never allowed them time to establish defensive positions or use superior weapons effectively. These principles, proven in the hedgerows of Normandy and the plains of France, became foundational doctrine for American armored forces. The aggressive close combat tactics Poole pioneered influenced tank commander training throughout the Cold War and into the modern era. Emphasis on synchronized crew precision, rapid decision-making under fire, and the understanding that superior tactics and training could overcome technical inferiority became central to American tank warfare doctrine. Poole's impact extended beyond tactics to leadership and military culture. His refusal to accept a commission, choosing instead to fight from a tank rather than command from headquarters, demonstrated a commitment to leading from the front that became a model for military leaders at all levels. His devotion to his crew, balancing paternal concern for their welfare with demanding standards for performance, created a template for leadership that combined care with mission accomplishment. His aggressive pursuit of the enemy, tempered by tactical intelligence and careful positioning, showed that boldness need not equal recklessness, that properly applied aggression could be the safest course in combat. The nickname War Daddy captured the dual nature of his leadership, simultaneously protective, ensuring his crew received the best training, equipment, and support possible, and relentlessly aggressive, leading them into the most dangerous positions repeatedly. His crew trusted him absolutely, knowing he would never ask them to do anything he would not do himself. That trust, built over months of training and validated in dozens of battles, created bonds between Poole and his crew that death itself could not break. The crew members who survived the 83 days of combat carried Poole's lessons and memory throughout their lives. Wilbert Richards, the diminutive driver who maneuvered Shermans through impossible positions, returned to civilian life but stayed connected to his fellow crew members, attending 3rd Armored Division reunions whenever possible. Bertrand Close, the teenage bow gunner whose deadly machine gun fire had marked him in combat, built a life shaped by his experiences, yet never forgot the intensity of those 83 days. Delbert Boggs, the loader whose speed and reliability gave Poole's tank its exceptional rate of fire, carried memories of those missions with him into civilian life. Willis Ohl, transferred back to the United States before the final battle, survived physically, but lived with the complex emotions of survivor guilt and relief. He had fired the shots that destroyed dozens of enemy vehicles, yet his temporary transfer spared him from witnessing the death of Paul Kenneth King in the September 19th engagement. Paul Kenneth King, the young replacement gunner from Anderson County, Tennessee, who served with Poole's crew for a single mission, became in death a symbol of the random and tragic nature of combat casualties. King was experienced, capable, and had survived previous engagements, yet he was filling in for Ohl when the German Panther found its target. His death at age 20 in Poole's tank during what was supposed to be a safer mission underscored the hard truth Poole had understood from the beginning. In war, safety is an illusion.
The broader impact of Poole's combat service on World War II is difficult to quantify, but undeniably significant. Every enemy tank he destroyed was one fewer threat to American infantry advancing through villages and fields. Every half-track or truck eliminated reduced the enemy's ability to reinforce defensive positions. Every anti-tank gun neutralized saved countless American lives. Perhaps most importantly, Poole's example inspired other tankers to fight aggressively, to take calculated risks, and to close with German armor rather than relying on standoff engagements. The cumulative effect of thousands of American tank commanders adopting even portions of Poole's principles multiplied his tactical impact across the entire European theater. The 3rd Armored Division's record reflected his influence. The division spearheaded the advance from Normandy to Germany, covering more ground and destroying more enemy equipment than most other American armored units. Poole's methods, perfected in the brutal crucible of hedgerow combat and the rapid pursuit across France and Belgium, became a standard against which all American tankers would measure themselves. His legacy endures not merely in statistics or awards, but in the training, doctrine, and fighting spirit of armored forces for generations to come.
Poole's aggressive tactics and willingness to push deep into German territory shaped the 3rd Armored Division's culture of offensive action. While many factors contributed to the division's success, Poole's example as the most effective American tank commander helped define its combat ethos. His story also reflects the larger narrative of American success in World War II. The United States often entered battle with equipment inferior to German weapons. The Sherman tank was outgunned and under-armored compared to Panthers and Tigers, and American soldiers frequently faced more experienced opponents. German tactical doctrine, developed since 1939, initially surpassed American practices. Yet the United States possessed decisive advantages, an industrial capacity that produced 49,000 Shermans compared to Germany's 6,000 Panthers, a training system emphasizing crew coordination and combined arms operations, and a culture rewarding initiative and aggressive action at all levels. Men like Poole rose through demonstrated ability rather than social connections or prior military heritage. Poole embodied these American advantages. A farm boy from Texas with no military lineage, he became the most effective American tank commander through skill, aggression, and leadership. His crew, drawn from across the country, demonstrated the value of diversity and cohesion. Together, they showed that superior tactics, crew coordination, and determination could overcome technical inferiority. Poole's methods contrasted sharply with German doctrine. German armor emphasized vehicle superiority, long-range engagements, and formation discipline. Training focused on individual skill and technical mastery, while the military culture prized hierarchy and obedience. Poole's philosophy inverted these assumptions. He closed ranges where German guns and armor were less effective, emphasized coordinated crew action over individual ability, and operated aggressively, often with minimal support, relying on initiative rather than waiting for fully synchronized attacks. These differences reflected broader cultural contrasts. German forces, shaped by centuries of Prussian tradition, valued discipline, hierarchy, and technical excellence. American forces, shaped by frontier experience and democratic ideals, valued initiative, adaptability, and practical results. Poole succeeded because he fully embodied the American approach, applying it against an enemy whose doctrine relied on technical precision and strict formations.
The ultimate proof of Poole's approach came in the war's outcome. German technical superiority could not prevent defeat. Panthers and Tigers, though formidable individually, could not overcome Germany's industrial weakness, strategic overextension, and cumulative losses. Sherman's, though often derided, played a decisive role by combining sufficient firepower with superior numbers, crew training, and aggressive tactics. Poole's record illustrates this clearly. Over 83 days, he destroyed 258 enemy vehicles, including 12 tanks, surviving 3 complete tank losses and continuing to fight effectively after each one. Poole's story challenges the myth of the Sherman as a mere death trap. The lesson is that in armored warfare, as in most combat, crew quality, training, coordination, courage, and tactical skill outweighs the raw specifications of the machine. Poole's achievements demonstrate that leadership, initiative, and teamwork are force multipliers, capable of turning an ostensibly inferior vehicle into a weapon of extraordinary effectiveness. His legacy endures as proof that men, not machines, win battles, and his philosophy reshaped American armored tactics for generations.
Poole's lessons resonate far beyond World War II tank combat. Across all eras of warfare, militaries wrestled with the balance between technological sophistication and effective personnel training. The temptation to rely on superior equipment as a substitute for rigorous training or sound tactics is perennial. Poole's record offers irrefutable proof that equipment alone cannot guarantee success. The finest tank or weapon in the hands of a poorly trained or timid crew will fail against a less advanced machine operated aggressively by competent, coordinated soldiers. Modern militaries continue to study Poole's service, extracting lessons that remain relevant in an age of computerized fire control, composite armor, and guided munitions. Aggressive maneuvering to close with the enemy, rigorous crew training emphasizing coordination and rapid decision-making, and leadership that inspires confidence under the harshest conditions. The Fort Knox Tank Driver Simulator Hall dedicated to Poole, the SSG Lafayette G. Poole Room, ensures these lessons endure, reaching every new generation of American tankers. It serves as both memorial and classroom, where Poole's legacy shapes soldiers who will operate weapons and face battles he could never have imagined. Poole's story also underscores the human cost and randomness of war. He survived 83 days of continuous combat, endured 3 complete tank losses, avoided death by inches on multiple occasions, destroyed hundreds of enemy vehicles, and killed over 1,000 soldiers, yet he lost his leg to German fire and watched his replacement gunner, Paul Kenneth King, die in what was meant to be a safer mission. King's death highlights how survival often hinges on chance as much as skill. King was filling in for Willis Owell, who had been rotated back to the United States. Though King was experienced and capable, he became a casualty simply by occupying that position at that moment. Poole himself survived situations of maximum exposure, spearheading attacks, standing in open turrets, closing to point-blank range with German armor, but was gravely wounded on what was intended to be a safe mission. The reality is stark. In combat, there are no guarantees, no truly safe positions. Survival depends on initiative, decisiveness, and sometimes sheer fortune. Poole internalized this lesson. Safety is an illusion. Success came from fighting aggressively, acting first, and closing with the enemy to neutralize their advantages. This philosophy enabled him to survive 83 days of relentless combat and become the most effective American tank commander in history.
But it came at a personal cost, his leg and the life of a young replacement crewman. From a tactical perspective, his service was invaluable to the American war effort. Personally, he bore a profound cost for decades. Both truths coexist. His decision to re-enlist in 1948, despite his disability, reflects the sense of purpose he drew from his military service. War transformed him, from a Texas farm boy to a soldier, from a soldier to a tank commander, from a tank commander to a legend. The Army became his life, his identity, and his calling. Returning to ordinary civilian work likely seemed impossible for someone who had experienced, achieved, and survived what Poole had. His 19 years of service, from 1941 to 1960, spanned the rise of the United States from a small, isolationist military to a global superpower. He enlisted when the Army still trained with wooden rifles and retired in the Cold War era when nuclear weapons and worldwide deployments defined American military power. Poole's death in 1991, months before the Soviet Union collapsed, closed a chapter in American military history that he had helped shape. His generation of World War II veterans, tested in the crucible of total war, had preserved democracy, defeated fascism, rebuilt Europe and Japan, and established the post-war international order. Poole's life and service exemplify how free societies, equipped with skill, determination, and courage, could match and surpass totalitarian military effectiveness, proving that American values were worth fighting and dying for. His legacy, preserved through training, memorials, and historical memory, continues to inspire soldiers, leaders, and citizens alike, reminding future generations that courage, skill, and leadership often outweigh technology alone in the crucible of combat.
Lafayette Green Poole's life and service embody a story of extraordinary courage, leadership, and sacrifice. From a farm boy in South Texas, he rose through the ranks to become America's deadliest tank commander, earning the nickname War Daddy for the paternal care he showed his crew, even as he led them into the most dangerous positions on the battlefield. Over 83 days of relentless combat in 1944, Poole and his crew destroyed 258 enemy vehicles, including 12 confirmed tanks, killed over 1,000 German soldiers, and captured approximately 250 prisoners. Each of these numbers tells part of the story, but the full measure of Poole's legacy lies in the principles he demonstrated. Aggressive action to close the range and neutralize German technical superiority, exceptional crew training and coordination, and leadership by personal example. Poole survived 3 complete tank losses, first to German fire, then to friendly fire, and finally to a Panther strike that killed his replacement gunner, Paul Kenneth King, and left Poole himself with a shattered leg. He endured the agony of amputation, yet chose to re-enlist in 1948, dedicating another 12 years to teaching and advising the next generation of tankers. His influence extended far beyond his own combat record. He shaped American armored doctrine, emphasizing that crew skill, coordination, and decisive leadership often outweighed technical advantages in equipment. Every American tanker trained at Fort Knox encounters his story, tactics, and leadership lessons, ensuring his influence continues decades after his death. Poole's story is also a reminder of the human cost and randomness of combat. His replacement gunner, Paul Kenneth King, died at age 20 in a battle that was supposed to be safe, illustrating the cruel reality that luck often plays a role alongside skill in survival. Poole himself survived extreme exposure and tremendous danger, Yet his war cost him a leg and eventually took a personal toll when his son, Captain Jerry Linpool, perished in Vietnam in 1970, 31 years after his father's World War II heroics. Through triumph and tragedy, Pool's life illustrates the sacrifices, unpredictability, and moral complexity inherent in combat. Beyond statistics, his legacy lies in leadership and character. He refused a commission to remain with his crew, leading from the front and earning their absolute trust. He demanded excellence while caring for the men who served under him, demonstrating that true leadership combines courage, empathy, and example. His actions inspired not only his immediate crew, but generations of American tankers and soldiers who studied his tactics and adopted his philosophy of aggressive, decisive action under fire. Pool's life also embodies broader American values, the potential for ordinary citizens to achieve extraordinary accomplishments through courage, skill, and determination. From a farm in South Texas to the battlefields of France, to hospitals, training facilities, and memorials, his story reflects initiative, perseverance, and leadership grounded in character rather than privilege. He witnessed the evolution of the U.S. Army from pre-World War II obscurity to a global superpower, contributing directly to its development and the doctrines that still define armored warfare today. Lafayette Green Poole, Staff Sergeant, later Chief Warrant Officer II, holder of the Distinguished Service Cross, Legion of Merit, Silver Star, Purple Heart, Belgian Fourragère, and French Legion of Honor, destroyed 258 enemy vehicles in 83 days of combat. He led with courage, inspired loyalty, and endured hardship, leaving a legacy that continues to shape military leadership and armored tactics. War Daddy may have left the battlefield on September 19, 1944, but his influence persists in the soldiers he trained, the tactics he perfected, and the ideals he exemplified. He died on May 30, 1991, in Keene, Texas, aged 71, leaving behind his wife Evelyn, 8 children, and a military legacy that remains a benchmark of American courage, skill, and devotion to duty.